Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets.
Head for the park and greet the Mets. Hot dogs, green grass, all out of shade. Guaranteed to have a heck of a day because those Mets are really rocking that ball, hitting those home runs over the wall. New Jersey, Brooklyn, Queens, uptown and down. Let's go Mets! That's the cheer all over New York town. Meet the Mets. 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 Head for the park and greet the Mets. Hot dogs, green grass, all out of shade. Guaranteed to have a heck of a day because those Mets are really rocking the ball, hitting those home runs over the wall.
And let's get started. Hi, everybody. This is the Baseball Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion, your host, the Hut. And we are back here live for the first time since the Carlos Correa thing sort of finished off and gotten this over with. I am very pleased to say that I did not want the player here. And we will find out if the Mets did the right thing. I think they did. We'll get into all the details. And, of course, please subscribe. And I got a little surprise. Whenever you send me a super chat, you'll hear the bell. Yes, I have a bell here. So we got a little sound effect. Not just me going ding, 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 which I'm already ding, 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 but and it's an actual Mets bell. Only a Mets bell. And I put the Mets on it. And I put a Mets sticker on it. So let me get into the chat. Hello, Mothman Evolved, Sean Zarnicki, Scott A. Who else? Michael Osborne, Abadaharaham, Barry. Now, as you know, this had been going on for the last 3 weeks. When we got surprised when we woke up the Wednesday before Christmas. Steve Cohen had, signed Correa to this massive 12-year, $315 million. But we learned by the end of that week that there was a problem with the physical. And it turns out that he has a bum leg that he's been dealing with since 2014. He's got a plate in his leg, I guess from some ankle injury that he sustained in the minor leagues. Hello to Peter Coyne. And because of this injury, the Giants took a step back before that to where they had to cancel the press conference that they were going to announce Correa. And for the last 3 weeks, really for 2 weeks, the Mets were trying to negotiate some kind of like agreement to where they would be covered in terms of the liability with this injury. Now, I, your host, was not for this because I felt that he was not a perfect fit. He's not a third baseman. They don't need a third baseman. He has had injury issues in his major league career that has nothing to do with this leg problem, with his bum leg that he's been dealing with. And I was concerned about the length of the contract, whether he would have held up. I had no issue with signing the player for a 4 to 5 year deal. I was fine with that. But to give him a 12-year contract when he's already 28 years old and has missed a lot of time in the major leagues. In 2018, he missed half a season. 29, he missed half a season. The last 2 years, he's missed 40 games. And this past year, in 22, he missed 26 games, which is a whole month of baseball games. So my biggest concern was, how do the Mets cover themselves with this particular player, having made a big deal about it, in particular the owner talking about how they were going to sign him and saying that he was the last big piece that he wanted to bring in. The Mets worked very hard. You know, the whole difficulty, the reason why a lot of this took so long is because we had the holidays. We had Christmas and we had New Year's Eve. I felt that if this wasn't resolved by last Wednesday, that this deal with the Mets was probably going to be dead. And I turned out to be right. I don't like being right about stuff that's negative towards the Mets, but I knew that was going to happen once that happened. And once we heard the Twins were back involved. Now, the Twins had done a physical on the player prior to the end of the season, because these players, they all take physicals at the end of the year. And for the most part, I think it's an exit physical, in case they need to get some kind of surgery or whatnot, and it just sort of covers the team and the player too. So they had done a physical on him, and they didn't seem to have an issue. They were going to offer him a 10-year contract, and I think they still have. I mean, I think there's 4 years onto their contract. You know, it's a 6-year deal, but they offered him that. He lost in the course of basically a month between the Giants, the Mets, and now the Twins. He went from being a guy that was from going to play in Northern California to New York City to Minnesota. And in the course of that time, he lost 7 years on a contract and $150 million. $150 million. So nobody can tell me that was going to be a smart move to bring him in here. And this is now the second time we've seen in the last few years that Scott Boras has screwed up a free agency with a player. The other player being Michael Conforto, who went from having a big contract with the Mets of 5 years, $100 million, and then a big qualifying offer to 2 years with the Giants. How's he going to have a good year? Let me get to some more people. Hello, Frank Hannon. Hello, Comic Kid. Hello, A7X Sniper 85 PSN. We're going to get into a couple players. Obviously, one of them is Baez, and Baez is an interesting case. Now, we'll go back again to Correa. He's never hit 100. He's never driven 100 runs. He's never hit over 30 home runs once in his career. And I just was concerned about where he was going to slot in with this Mets lineup, because the Met lineup from 1 to 4 was about as perfect as you could possibly get. in terms of the offense, the ability to get on base, the ability to have impact at the top of the lineup. And I was not, I was trying to, and having a very difficult time trying to figure out where the Mets would play Correa in this lineup. I didn't want to lose Marte as my number 2 hitter, especially considering, um, especially considering the fact that the team is going to have the ability to steal more bases with these rules changes that we're going to get. Obviously, bigger bases and the inability to pitchers to throw over the second to a base more than twice in a game. So because of these different things, I didn't think um, Correa fit either at the top of the lineup because he cannot uh, be the 2 hitter because he can't steal bases, and I didn't think he had enough power to bat 5th in this lineup to be able to protect Pete Alonso on a regular basis, and it sort of messes up their balance a little bit. The offense is just not balanced enough. I mean, they obviously need another right-handed bat now, but they need a left-handed left-handed hitting 4th outfielder now because they got all these 2 right-handed hitters and Nimmo. But we'll get into some of these ideas that I have for this year and next year. Next year is not on the docket right now because obviously got to play the season. We're 5 weeks away from spring training, at least from pitchers and catchers, and we're going to have a lot of fun piecing stuff together. But just to sort of wrap this up with Correa, he was not a right fit here. I know I've seen an article about the players anonymously complaining that they were disappointed that he wasn't coming here. And saying that the Braves and the Phillies were probably very happy. Now, I mentioned about the Braves and the Phillies. Mets beat them 14 out of 19 times. They won 9 games and lost 10 games against the Braves. And that's after the Braves had won 6 out of the last 7 games against the Mets in Atlanta. Prior to that, the Braves had lost 8 out of 12 to the Mets. The Braves had to win 800 baseball to catch the Mets, and they did not catch them. They won on a technicality with this whole nonsense with the tiebreaker because they didn't want to have a game 163. So, be that as it may, I just didn't feel that this is that big of an impact because the Mets have the same team. The unknown factor of this offseason, in my view, is Kodai Senga because we don't know what kind of pitcher he's going to be here. He's an unknown factor with this ball club and in Major League Baseball. And I'm just curious how he's going to perform. It's going to be fun to watch because, obviously we've never seen him. But he has the ability to be an ace. He was an ace in Japan. He was the best pitcher in Japan for a long time. And I'm very excited to see. Hello, Victor Vargas. Frank Hannon says, we are all disappointed, but we need to look at it as it's not meant to be. I'm not disappointed, okay? I didn't want the player here. And I would mention this. This was something I thought about last night. You remember the post that he put up a few days ago on Instagram of him and his kid wearing this sort of I love N something. It said N. There was no Y to it. And he was basically trying to get as much money out of the Twins and manipulate everybody in the Mets audience. And that's what he did. He made everybody think that he was coming here. I even did a video with this kid wearing this stupid shirt. Just think about the kind of mentality this guy has that he will manipulate people online and with his child. So just keep that in mind. I don't know how he would have performed here and how he would have handled being in New York. New York is not Minnesota. New York is not Houston. So if he'd gotten off to a lousy start here, which is the pattern of these very good to great players, there's only a few players that have gotten off to great starts here with the Mets. Gary Carter, Carlos Delgado, and Max Scherzer. And even Scherzer got booed this year. I mean, last year. So just keep that. Just keep that. I'll put this up, Scott. That's pretty funny. We don't know if it said a Y. It could have been a V or a W. Uh, but here's the thing about Nimmo, Victor. That is a separate issue. Nimmo has been here. He can perform here. I'm not taking a chance on a guy that's not been in the fire here. And Brandon Nimmo has nothing to do with Carlos Correa. Mets need a center fielder. Mets did not need Carlos Correa. Mets don't need him. He needed them, and they screwed it up because of this thing with the physical. Now, all right. Just want to get this off my chest. I've been sort of sitting around thinking about this. I got home last night, was tired. Today, was able to get this bell. So whenever you send me a super chat, you'll ring the bell here. Hope this makes everybody crazy here. And that's another thing. Before we move on, Mets didn't need a shortstop with Correa. Correa was going to learn third base for the first time in his career. I don't count what he did in the WBC as anything. That is an exhibition in my mind. So he's never played one inning at third base. He's played all his time in the majors, shortstop. Mothman Evolved. Hut, would you still do dealings with Boris? Yeah, you got no choice. You have no choice. So you're not going to sign any players? I don't think that. That's not a big deal. Boris is just trying to get the most money. Now, also, before I forget, I will mention this. Carlos Baerga, who played for the Mets, he's won one of the more lopsided trades in Mets history, and that Mets got nothing out of him offensively. He turned out to be a very good defensive second baseman, better than people said he was. But he turned into nothing as an offensive player here. Obviously, he played for the Indians. He was a star with the Indians. Mets got to be pretty much washed up. But interestingly enough, I would mention this. He posted that the Mets he said this yesterday in the morning, that the Mets are going to get Carlos Correa. Carlos Baerga's agent when he played was Scott Boras. He said he had one source, and that one source was probably Scott Boras. So Carlos Baerga, in my mind, has zero credibility when it comes to anything that has anything to discuss with any Scott Boras players. Zero credibility. So, obviously, the guys that have been covering the game, Ken Rosenthal, believe it or not, John Heyman, even though he can't figure out how to do the autocorrect on his phone, has more credibility than Carlos Baerga. He's got no credibility. A couple of things. The Mets are interested in Zach Britton. Mets are looking to bring him in as another lefty. Obviously, Buck knows him. He pitched for Buck. And he's not been very good the last 2 years. I guess he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. He pitched for the Yankees and he pitched for the Orioles. We're gonna have some more players coming in here, but Zach Britton is an interesting case. I've been talking about him for the last few weeks. That would be a player for the Mets to get, especially considering this team, I think, needs another lefty in the bullpen. We know that they brought in Brooks Raley, and they can use another lefty. They really didn't have much of a lefty out there last year. They had Julio Rodriguez. He was a disaster. He was not somebody that was reliable, in my view. But they were able to win 101 games, essentially without a lefty. It didn't really affect them because the Mets had all these pitchers, all these right-handers that had the ability to get lefties out. So Zach Britton brings, experience. You could bring him late in the game. He would be a very solid move, and you wouldn't have to give up a lot of money for him. I don't know if he's looking for a major league contract. Now, the major league roster for the Mets is at 40. Um, so they're gonna have to figure out if he's gonna be a minor league deal or a major league deal. Todd Licata, hello. I don't like it. Philly's pen is getting good. Okay, let's talk about Gregory Soto. So I mentioned him a couple of days ago when the Phillies made that move. The guy walks the ballpark. Uh, the guy walks the ballpark. He's got an ERA. I mean, not an ERA. He has a walks per 9 innings over 5 in his career. He's been pitching in Detroit. Uh, he has been pitching in Detroit for how many years? His whole career? No pressure, especially since they've been so bad. Uh, Now he's going to Philadelphia. He's going to be walking the ballpark. Those people down there, they're going to flip out. And the Mets killed that bullpen last year. They destroyed that bullpen late in the game. How many times the Mets come back on the Phillies? The Phillies don't concern me, obviously, as much as the Braves do. You know, the Braves have shown that they'll get off to a slow start and come back. The Phillies were a third place team. They were a third place team. Like I said, the Mets won 14 out of 19 to the Phillies. And the Mets beat them late a lot. They also no-hit them. Also would mention this, Bryce Harper's not going to be there until after the All-Star break. We will have to contend with Trey Turner. Nick Castellanos it doesn't seem like he likes it there in Philadelphia. Some of the comments that he was making. Let me tell you something, Barry. Soto had it walks per 9 innings the last 2 years over 5. Nothing inflated. This is a consistent thing with Soto. He walks a lot of batters. He didn't give up a lot of hits, but he walks a lot. Cannot walk batters late in the game. And just think about guys that he's going to have to face with the Mets. Brandon Nimmo, Mark Hanna, taking pitch after pitch after pitch, squeezing the plate, trying to draw long innings. There are going to be a lot of long ninth innings against that guy if he's the closer on this team. All right. Now, the Met bullpen has improved. I'm very happy that they brought in David Robertson. I kind of figured that because they really wanted him last trading deadline, but they brought him in now. Obviously, he pitched for the Yankees when Billy Epler was there. And the one thing I've noticed now with Buck now being the manager and with Billy, they like bringing in these veteran guys that they know. Britton, I think, is going to be with the Mets. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. Just like Michael Gibbons was here. Michael Gibbons, was that a bad trade or what? God, he did nothing. He was terrible here. He was terrible. He actually pitched better when he came back from COVID. Boy, he was terrible. Hello, the sports doctor. I can see Britton being here with the Mets because Buck managed them. And we have a situation now with the Mets. The bullpen, the biggest piece they could have brought in was bringing Edwin Diaz back. Having Edwin Diaz back, even if he's not, because obviously he had a career year last year, he's still going to pitch well. I think just sort of his mental, all that is cleared up now. I don't think he's going to have a problem mentally now. He might not pitch nearly as perfectly as he did last year, but I think just in terms of his ability to handle things, it'll be much better. That's a big deal. Big mental edge that now he has. But we'll see. But obviously, we have him. We have Dave Robertson at the end of the game. They could use another pitcher, probably another right-hander. There's not a lot out there now. Zach Brett would be an easy sign if he wants to be here and what kind of offer the Mets give him. But they'd have to maneuver some of the roster space now because the roster is full. The sports doctor says this. Let me read this. Mets don't make any more significant moves this upcoming season's trade deadline include. Do you think we can win the series? They need more help offensively. They need power on this team. Correa was not going to provide that. Just wasn't enough there. because I had mentioned this, some people didn't really care for this comment. He only had 6 more home runs than Eduardo Escobar. Uh, so I don't think. Yeah, I mean the protection for people. We'll get into a couple names. One name the Mets could probably bring him in now. He's a free agent. Uh, Again, this thing with the DH is not as big of an issue as it was last offseason. Because last offseason we had Dom Smith and J.D. Davis, and they were the worst DH combo in baseball. How they won 100 games and was so far out in front with that duo there, it tells you how good of a job Buck did. Borea Cole says, our season's going to depend on our youth stepping up. Beatty, Alvarez, and Mauricio should be given a chance. All three have the potential to be impact players. Now, Mauricio, I don't think they might not look at him as ready yet. But he'll probably start the season in double A and have a chance to get to triple A this year. I don't know how close he is. Even though he had a big offseason, I don't know where he is right now. Beatty and Alvarez, now that Correa's not here, Beatty's going to have a chance to make this team coming out of spring training. Same thing with Alvarez. Alvarez said today he's going to be ready. Thank you, Frank Hanna, for showing up. Thank you for the compliment. I'll see you tomorrow. Well, maybe we'll see you. I don't know if you'll see me on tomorrow. But no, Todd Licata, Correa had 26 home runs. Escobar had 20. Correa had 64 RBIs, and Escobar had 69. So the home run, the power numbers is what I've been looking at with Correa. That's why I didn't think it was that big of an upgrade offensively for the Mets, to be honest with you. The sports doctor, where do you play Mauricio? Now that Correa is out of play, now that Correa is not here now, he's in the wonderful place of Minnesota. I know. Everybody wants to go to Minnesota as opposed to New York, but he'll play in obscurity. We'll never hear from him again. And if we do see him in the postseason, he'll be going up against the Yankees. The Yankees always beat the Twins. Sports doctor said, yes, he will be a third baseman. I mean, not because just if you've seen him last spring, he's just too big to be playing shortstop. And they said that his future was at third. It wasn't at second. It wasn't at shortstop. It wasn't really in the outfield. He's not really a fast. He's not really a base stealer. He's not a base stealer. He's slow. So he's a third baseman, I would think, in the future. Aaron says, I want to win a championship in Minnesota. Why? Minnesota did what they had to do. And you want to send the Mets to a place that they're going to be freezing their asses off come October? I don't think so. Hold on, I need a drink. Look. Yeah, you don't want the Mets playing in Minnesota when it's icy cold. Screw that. F that. Just playing anywhere would be a big deal. In the meantime, please subscribe to this channel and like this video. I mean, the Twins, I mean, they weren't a good team last year, and they had him on there. You know, they collapsed. I mean, they basically faded away in the second half. You know, with him on there. So it wasn't like a situation he was this big leader. I mean, he is not a player. He's not a franchise player. He is a complimentary player. He is not the type of player that you build your team around. He's the type of player that you that's why he was not a bad fit for the Mets in that regard, because he wasn't going to be expected to be a star. He didn't have to be a star here. There he has to be a star. It also tells you that he didn't want to deal with some pressure that he was going to have to deal with here. Wolfman Evolved says, Correa is in Minnesota. People act like he's going to have 101 win season like the Mets did. Good luck, Twinkie fans. Met haters ain't happening. Let me tell you something. These Mets fans, haters, these Mets haters, these assholes have come out of the woodwork on Twitter and on here like you cannot imagine. Like they've been like for the last year they've been wanting to just come at us based off of this thing with Correa. I've seen some of the ridiculous comments on Twitter from that asshole, that slob Frank Fleming, to this moron on WFAN, Keith McPherson. You have these guys that don't know what the hell they're talking about, acting like Correa was the second coming of Babe Ruth. You know, the guy has not played a full season in his whole career except for 2015. Frank Fleming is the most pathetic individual online. Everything is one negative thing about the Mets. He said yesterday that the Mets were going to finish in last place behind the Nationals and the Marlins. The Marlins, who did absolutely nothing this offseason. They brought in Gene Segura and old Johnny Cueto. And they give Kim Nang like a medal, like she's done something special down there. And the Nationals that basically ripped apart their whole franchise, trading Juan Soto. Meanwhile, they're in the middle of getting sold. Give me a break. And you don't have to finish in first place to get to the World Series. The Phillies showed us that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So these guys, and then you have Keith McPherson. Dude, he needs to get his GED or something. Because that hooked on phonics and the GED, it ain't working out for him. None of that stuff is working out for him. Okay? Between his hot takes about the Mets Old Timers Day, saying that the Mets, that's not your thing. You don't need to do that. Only the Yankees have the right to have an Old Timers Day. This is a guy who his sports history with Keith McPherson started 5 minutes after he decided to be a sports broadcaster. So there's not a lot of history there with him. But this is the kind of insanity that we've been dealing with really over the last week. I had a Minnesota Twins fan complain about the Mets. The Mets won 101 games last year. The Twins were finished under 500 with Correa. You know. And I'm having to deal with this here. Now, I think he got sent off. I went back and forth a little bit with him, which I don't normally do. But I sent him off to the Phantom Zone, by the way. The sports doctor says, do you think the anti-Met sentiment is more anti-Cohen sentiment, rhetoric? Yeah, I think a lot of it is. This goes back from 2 years. I'm going to point something out about Frank Fleming as well. Frank Fleming works for Barstool Sports. Who does he work for? He works for Dave Portnoy. Okay? Who's Dave Portnoy, if you must ask? And what was he trying to do a few years ago? He tried to buy the Mets alongside Alex Rodriguez. So you have an anti-Met fan working for Barstool. He does nothing but complain about the Mets. I wonder if the Mets had been bought by Barstool. Would he have had this attitude? You know, I highly doubt it. But that is something to bring up. We know that Dave Portnoy has caused a lot of trouble, especially last year, when it came to what was going on with Steve Cohen and his hedge fund. Demanding answers. I saw that from Boomer Esiason last year, complaining about Steve Cohen's business. So all this goes back to a lot of this hatred from Frank Fleming, and a lot of these accounts come from Barstool, and the corporation that runs this Mets channel called Mets Pod. What the hell is it called? You know. Let me see. Tyler Cox says this. That guy gets a job. This is Frank Fleming. Just act dramatic, and anti-Met gets you a job in sports. He got that job because he had a meltdown on the train at a train station because he missed the train to get to Citi Field. You know, and then he acted like a damn fool. Instead of figuring out a way to get to the ballpark, take a cab or whatever, he's and complaining, and they did the video viral. I will mention this because I have a connection here with the comic book side and a political side. Um, Alex Stein is a conservative um, comedian, and he's been fighting with Dave Portnoy for the last probably 6 months. Now, Alex Stein has been going into these different live streams, these Comicsgate live streams, and he met one of the Comicsgaters called Cecil. So a few weeks ago, Alex Stein and Cecil and another individual, and I guess some black guy, completely no shirt on, shirtless, when going into Barstool looking for Dave. And Dave never showed up. They sent female security to basically beat up Alex Stein while they were filming all this. They showed Frank Fleming. Frank Fleming, when they showed him on camera at first, was smiling and laughing at the whole situation. And when he realized that there was a camera on him, changed his stance to be angry. So I know he's a fraud and I know he's fake, bought and paid for by a big corporation. So that's kind of my multi-task. I was surprised to see Cecil on there. I'm not a fan of Cecil, but I thought it was amusing to see him without his mask on, by the way. But anyway, John Infante says, is anti-Mets sentiment, they said the same thing about the Wilpons. They just Mets haters, probably Yankees or Phillies or Atlanta fans. Well, it's just not liking the Mets online is a very popular thing. And this is something I've noticed for a very long time. This is long before I was even doing any YouTube videos. I've noticed it. It has calmed down a lot. It has calmed down a lot since the Wilpons have sold the team, because a lot of these old accounts, these old trolling accounts, Elon Musk got rid of them. They've become sort of irrelevant. And the fact that Cohen is so willing to spend so much money, that like blows out one of their narratives. But one of the narratives, well, the Mets are always going to Mets, whatever the F that means. It's just ridiculous stupidity. And we know that the Yankees do not like the fact that the Mets are the team in town, because you had this whole thing with Randy Levine talking about being the flagship franchise in Major League Baseball. And the Yankee fans, online, they're really angry. They're really pissed because they brought in Carlos Rodon, but they've still not solved their problem as a team. Is they did not improve their offense, and they still don't have a shortstop. I don't care what they say about Volpe and Peraza. They still do not have a shortstop, and they let all of these shortstops go by the wayside. They didn't make a trade for Lindor. They didn't sign Correa twice. They didn't sign Baez. Now, I mentioned this about Trevor Story. It had been well known that he's had an injury to his arm, to his elbow, his throwing elbow, I guess. And teams were very reluctant to make a move for him. I know the Mets were interested in him last trading deadline in 21. I did quite a few videos on him. He's got a bad elbow, and he's going to have to get surgery. And who knows when he's coming back? He might not play the whole season. From what I understand, Heimblum is getting absolutely ripped apart because everybody knew that elbow was bad, but the Red Sox signed him anyway. Now they don't have any shortstop now that can play for them. And, oh well. That team is run so poorly, the Red Sox. It's not even funny. Then they have a shortstop. And let me get back to my point with the Yankees. Xander Bogaerts becomes a free agent. And that guy is a professional. He is a pro's pro in terms of how he is as a player. Hello, rich boy. And Bogaerts doesn't get signed. The Yankees didn't sign him. Another shortstop they didn't sign. And that team, the Yankees need a shortstop. They need a professional. Look, Corey Seager was the perfect player for the Yankees because he's a left-handed hitter. He's got power. He was perfect for them. They didn't sign him. They didn't sign Marcus Simeon. Perfect. So the Yankees, they brought in Rodon. That improved their pitching. They won 99 games. So they still can't get past the Astros. You need a good bat to beat the Astros. You know, and the Mets are going to have this problem down the line where they face Houston, if they face Houston this year. So that is something we have to keep in mind too with the Mets is that they're going to need to get another hitter in here that can hit really good pitching. That's one drawback to not having Correa here. Is not having somebody that can hit really, really good pitching, championship type pitching. But I mean, the Mets, this group of Met players, they've never been to postseason as a group together, and it's not like when you do it for the first time, you learn a lot of stuff about yourself. You learn a lot about your teammates. You um, learn a lot about how to deal with the pressure of being in postseason. I look at this as the first learning experience for a lot of these guys. Pete Alonso's never played in the postseason. Jeff McNeil has. He had a good postseason, 3 games. Brandon Nimmo had never played in postseason. So these guys have never gone through a lot of this stuff. So it's important for them to learn how to handle things and handle the pressure and be able to grow from that. This team will learn from it. And the team is intact. They didn't break the team up, Other than DeGrom leaving and Walker leaving and Bassett leaving, this is a team that's pretty much intact. So the Mets are going to lose 85 games, 90 games. They're not going to do that. The pitching is just too good. Like I said, before, Kodai Senga could possibly be a game changer, especially the fact that nobody has seen him. I was thinking he could probably win the Rookie of the Year. I mean, if you think about it. Now, the Met younger players. Alvarez is going to get a lot of time to catch these veterans. Hey, I get to use the bell. Ding, ding. That's what you get now on the Baseball Hut. You get to hear the bell. There we go. Thank you, Roberto. Also, a member on the channel. Yes, whenever you send me a super chat, you get the bell. Thank you, sir. So the Mets are going through a learning process. This is very similar to what they went through in the 80s and the 90s, late in the 90s, is you have to build off of it. This is a building. Last year was a huge building block year. They won 101 games. They went to postseason for the first time in 6 years. There's not a situation. I mean, 2013, 2014 were building years too, because then in 2015 they went to the World Series. But obviously, as you know, that the pitching didn't stay healthy, and obviously there were all kinds of issues with Matt Harvey, and some mental issues and with, I guess, Noah Syndergaard. But this team, this is the first year of this run. You hope they'll take the next step this year. Even if they don't win as many games, or maybe they don't get out to the fast start that they got off to last year, or even if they finish in second place or third place, they have the ability to be a very dangerous team in the postseason. And it wouldn't surprise me if they go to the World Series and lose the Astros, and then maybe next year is that big step. So you can't look at, well, they didn't win this year, got to break the team up. No. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And that's the thing you find with some of these people online is that, well, you know what? The Mets are terrible. They're going to lose 90 games. Why? They haven't shown that. And you have a strong manager. You have the most handsome manager in baseball, by the way. He was voted most handsome in baseball. So that having Sorry about that. I have these sort of once in a while I get these glitches here where I live. All the houses are on top of each other, and sometimes I think it interferes with the connection I have here. But I'm back. Now I would mention this too. I will be back later on the football hut doing a live stream. I've done much with the football side, but I have to start moving on that channel because it needs to be done. And I said that once this Correa business was over with, we'll talk more about football. I'm a big New York Giants fan. Uh, and we're going to talk about the Giants playing the Vikings this week. Giants have a very good chance to get to the next round and beat the Vikings. They were very close to going into overtime. Last time they played them on Christmas Eve. But just to sort of wrap up this live stream, I'm not going to be on too much longer. Let me go through a couple of names and just for people to chew on. That I've been meaning to do it. People in the chat were saying Javi Baez. Now, Baez has hit 30 home runs twice in his career, and he did that the 1 year, the couple months that the Mets were had him in 21. Now he has an opt out after this year, so he would be a good 1 year rental. I would not give up much for him. He would have to play second or third. Obviously, the Mets don't need a shortstop, but he would be. I would not have a problem with him if the Mets were to bring him in here. They would not have to give up a lot for him. The Tigers, I don't know what the Tigers are doing. The Tigers are a mess. I read earlier the Tigers are moving in their ballpark so they can hit from more power there. Because that's a bad ballpark, boy. It's a bad ballpark. It's a bad ballpark. And, you struggle to hit there. And they're a bad team, so that's a bad combination. What time's the football hut? Show probably around 7. Probably around 7 o'clock. Doing a little research on different kind of video ideas for both channels today, so a little bit. So keep an eye on Baez. I know the owner liked him. I know that the Mets owner liked Baez, but we do know about this thing about the thumbs down. I was not too enamored with that. I would not have a problem with taking a chance on him on a 1 year deal because he's going to opt out. And he's going to have a big year, I think. Last year, he did not have a good year. He had a bad year last year, for the Tigers. Keep an eye on Willie Adames, plays for the Brewers. Now he has a few years on his contract, and you're gonna have to give up a lot for him because he's actually played really well in Milwaukee. And he's hit 30 home runs. He hit 30 home runs last year. So keep an eye on him. Just being moved in general because that's a weird team. They're very willing to move players there. From Mothman Evolved, Hut, come will recover and make a move. I can't imagine him not doing something. He seems like the type to hate losing. Well, he's done that the last 2 years. When the Mets didn't get Steven Matz, he flipped out. I said, I can't believe this, kind of like an unprofessionalism. And he went and signed Max Scherzer. And then this past season, in December on Friday, and I was not home to do a video. I was out. I was at a family function, and it was a big family function. And DeGrom signed with the Rangers. The final week, a couple days later, he brought in Verlander and brought back Brandon Nimmo, brought in Senga, Quintana, on and on and on. It brought in a reliever. He will respond. He will respond in some kind of move. The sports doctor, he never found his hearing. Maybe we'll find it this time. Maybe they'll find it on the second base if they bring him back. Oh, I just got a notification. Verlander upped and buying New York City penthouse. It's from the New York Post. The pair in contract for a glam Upper East Side home. Well, she lived in New York for a long time. I hope they understand. I hope she understands. As hot as she is, as hot as Kate Upton was, still is, Hope she understands that if her husband doesn't pitch well, he will be booed, and she'll be booed too. But people will get very annoying with some of her antics. Cursing out the Phillies fans. She starts doing that with the Met fans. She's gonna have a very rude awakening. Um, keep an eye on Willie Damas, like I said. Keep an eye on Brian Reynolds. There was a lot of talk about that yesterday, but the Mets aren't going to bring in him. Now, he is left handed, but I don't know if he is enough protection for Pete. They have to give up a ton for him. The prices for him have been extremely high. And it seems like today the Rangers seem to have enough of what they're looking for. They have a lot of young pitching. Now, Kate Upton is no Anna Benson. Anna Benson was trying to be famous. Kate Upton is famous. She's a bigger name than he is online and in general. Kate Upton's a big name. She's a huge name. You're on the cover of Sports Illustrated a few times, and you're not in the sports world. That puts you in a big stratosphere. Mothman Evolved, did you see Correa's comments? The guy is hilarious. Signed for the money. He did not want to be a Twin. That's the truth. Oh, yeah, we know that. He was getting more per year from the Twins than he was from the Mets. The Mets are only going to give him 20 only. Going to give him $27 million. The Mets are going to give him a 12-year contract. Okay? Mets are going to give him a 12-year contract. But they weren't guaranteeing the last 6. It's going to be unguaranteed. And he was going to have to take a physical on this. Jeffrey Suarez. Mets failed, in my opinion, to get a deal with Correa. They could have found a way to get a reasonable contract, maybe 8 years. 12 years is too risky. Oh, no, not 8 years. 8 years, please. Correa would have lit up every player in the lineup, too. Oh, okay. Okay, so we got one guy that hit 40 home runs last year. Another guy that won a batting title. And another guy that drove in 100 runs. When Correa plays 160 games, and Correa is such a good player, he really lit it up in Minnesota, didn't he? He made everybody better there in Minnesota last year. What was the Twins' record there? Let's take a look, shall we? I don't know if you're aware of how it is here, Jeffrey. Minnesota, boy, 78 and 84. He really lit up Minneapolis and Minnesota. Boy, oh boy, he lit it up. He lit it up so great that Byron Buxton. How many games did he miss? Now let me see. Byron Buxton. Where did Byron Buxton? Because he was such a fave of people 2 years ago. Byron Buxton played 92 games. He really lit him up. Byron Buxton. What a great all-time player. This is another thing of stupidity by some of the teams and really by some of the players. I've mentioned this. Players of the past did not want to be put into bondage by the teams. So that's why they fought so hard for free agency. Now you're seeing players taking deals, taking money that is under their value. Now, Byron Buxton in that regard is not a great example because he's been injured a lot over his career. But this is a guy that's considered to be enormously talented, but he's always hurt. He's going to earn $15 million over the next years until 2028. And this is a guy that very talented, but if he did not do that, did not sign with the Twins and become a free agent, with his talent and his overall numbers, he probably would have gotten more money. The teams are absolutely destroying these players, in my view, over the long term. What the Braves are doing are so undercutting the players down there. I thought that um, Sean Murphy, so undervalued his market. The Braves pulled wool over his eyes. Dio says, "Notice your thumbnail. What's up with Baez and the Mets?" I think Baez, because he's gonna be a free agent. Dio, he's gonna be. Um, he has an opt out after this season. He's gonna opt out. He's not gonna want to stay there in Detroit. So I could see him being moved because if he goes to the Tigers, say, I want to get out of here. Trade me to some place that has a chance to win, or I'm going to opt out. I could see him doing that. I would not take I would not take issue with him being here for 1 year with the Mets. Um, you know. Now, here's another name that I want to mention: Andrew McCutchen. Andrew McCutchen has been an all-star. They've been a team that he's been a player that has become sort of a role player. Now he kills left-handed pitching. He would be a role player here with the Mets, and you can use him as protection for Pete when the Mets would go up against a left-handed pitcher. So I would not have a problem. I would not have a problem with him, and he's a pro's pro. It's not going to cost you anything other than money. Um, Now he doesn't have any connection to Billy Epler or Buck Showalter, but he's a pro's pro. And I would not take issue with him being here. Now I'll go through a couple of names that are kind of unrealistic at the moment. One is Manny Machado. He will be um, a player that will be a free agent. So keep an eye on him. He's a better player than Correa. And keep an eye, of course, on Shohei Ohtani. Show me the money. He's going to get a lot of money. He's going to get $500 million. Dio says, we gave up Pete Crow Armstrong for Baez last time. What will he cost us this time? Not much. Pete Crow Armstrong, relax on. The jury's still out on whether he can hit major league pitching. So I am not I'm not more worked up about him. Morph Man Evolved. Well, it's funny. I should mention that Keith McPherson. I mentioned him earlier. I personally think he's the biggest hater ever. He's on WFN, bashes Mets fans and the Mets viciously. He's on Twitter as well. Yeah, but there's not a lot of brain power going on up there. He obviously, I don't know what like group home they pilfered him from, but believe me, he's not a very impressive individual. He was not. He is not. He is not, and the Hut says is not the best and the brightest. The Sports Doctor. Next offseason, this channel is going to explode. Well, we'll see. I had a really good 3 weeks because of Correa. Correa basically caught me. Well, really, the channel is doing okay. But because I have a job and I have to pay bills, I have to sort of work around my schedule. So there are times where I'm not here when big things happen. Like I wasn't here when the Mets made the trade for Lindor. I was not here when the Mets lost out on Bauer, and that was a huge thing for one particular channel. I remember that one channel had 20,000 people watching his channel because he was the only one on, only game in town, and I was at work. I was also at a function for family back in December when our former buddy Jacob deGrom signed with the Rangers. So I was really irritated that night. Oh, really? He Morph Man Evolved. He actually said in the station, I swear I'm not lying. If you can find it, something to the effect of lame Met fan YouTubers. That guy's so ridiculous. Oh, really? Well, Why is he going after people on other platforms? The one thing I noticed about the media in terms of the journalists and people on TV and in the papers, they don't mention us too much. They ignore us. John Heyman did not even tweet out to Wardy about his scoop about the Mets moving on with Correa. Um, so Keith McPherson, he didn't know my reputation as the comic book guy. And I will go after him so hard. I will go after him very hard. Um, but I try to be very nice. I try to be very, very nice here. You know, he is one of these people that doesn't know a lot about sports. He is diversity hire. MLB Network hired him as well to go with these SJWs that they had this show with that lady with the pink hair who has the pink hair, so you don't have to notice that she ain't that great looking. I could really, Keith McPherson could be an interesting thing. It'd be an interesting experiment here at some point. Interesting. But over the next couple of weeks, it'll be interesting what we talk about because now Correa was really the last big free agent, and everybody everybody is everybody's gone, and it's not like a trade. A trade has to happen, But we'll see what happens. Like I said, this channel has done pretty well. It's done really well over the last couple of weeks. Been able to do a lot of live streams here. I haven't even seen what the number of the subs on here is. If you're new, you want to participate in the chat, just sub to the channel. So we got one sub as I've been on here. Yeah. Keith McPherson is a guy that really he dresses like a slob. I mean, he dresses like an ad for like bad hip hop music. It's just bad. It's just a bad. I mean, I'm not a snappy dresser, but John Connolly says, "Hut, when does the WBC start? Didn't it start like at the beginning of March? I'm not 100% sure. I have a lot of work to do on the football side because we got the draft. So I'm trying, like I said, we're going to be doing a lot of experimentation over there to try to get the sub count up. But I get the channel monetized. But I don't know when the WBC. I mean, maybe somebody in the chat can check it out. Well, that kid, he's corporate now. Okay, he's corporate. I'm not gonna say anything, but when a corporation owns you, Yes, I mean I'm gonna do stuff with the NFL draft. I have to ask for days off. I'll get days off in April. We're gonna have the draft here. We're gonna cover the whole draft. So well, so we'll have a mock draft. I mean, I love the draft and with the MLB, that was great. The last 2 years, I had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah, we'll do a mock draft, and we'll do a mock. We'll do a mock draft for MLB. I think. Well, no, because it's got to be Met centric. But we'll do now. When I did the old combo cut and it became the baseball at 3, I did a lot of stuff with the draft, and I just got rid of that channel. But we'll have football content. We'll have basically Giants centric content, and well, thank you, Moth man. I never had a problem with you, Moth man. So, This is the preeminent Mets channel. Don't let the numbers fool you. I don't always have time to set up videos. I'm not sitting home all day waiting for the news to break. Okay. I got to work. So a lot of times I do videos in my car. And I would mention sometimes, the intros that I have, it's recorded. That's the one thing I have. That may be recorded. Although the last 2 videos weren't recorded. I did them as I did the video. But we'll see what happens. But so I'm going to end the live stream. I want to thank you all for coming by. Quite a few people here at this early a period. I was going to go on later, but I want to do something with the football side. And I said I was going to do stuff on there. It's very important that I get that channel moving and rolling in a way that needs to be done. And I want to thank you all for coming by. We will be back in the live stream at some point. I don't know about tomorrow. I'll be going out tomorrow evening in all likelihood. The next live stream here could be Sunday. We got the Giants game on Sunday. I don't know. So we'll see how that plays out. But, thank you, John Connolly. Thank you for everybody for coming by. We'll go over more names as we get on. As we go on, we got 5-6 weeks left before, I think, was it February 18th? It's pitchers and catchers, or February 16th, or one of those days. We've got another 5-6 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks to get there. And we'll get there. And then we'll probably shift to a lot of football after that, because at the draft and the regular season with baseball. But thank you for coming by. Thank you for the super chat there, Roberto. Okay. To the host. Well, Jeffrey, you can call me the Hut. Oh, it's funny you should say that. That's what I call myself. How close are we to getting a World Series ring? My take is our pitching will bring us to a ring closer than last year. Our bats are good, but not clutch enough for a ring. Agreed. I think this team could get to the World Series. If they don't play teams like the Padres that are filled with Met killers, they should be able to get there. So thank you. And we have a bell for the super chats. So happy. I got one that works. Not one that was a piece of crap. Please subscribe to the Baseball Hut. If you're watching on replay, leave comments in the comment section. And if you're watching on replay, send me a super thanks. We do have those here as a way to keep this monetization going. Thank you for having me on. I'll get it right. I get the ending right. Thank you for having me. I'll be back in the near future. Thank you. Have a good day, and I'll see you later.